everyone, Alexa Dunn here, and today I am going to be doing a Q&A. I haven't done one of these in a while, and it's winter, it's December, we love the content. Let's be real, Q&As are fun and it's great for content generation. And you guys sent me some great questions, and I wonder if it's because this time, instead of calling for it just on my YouTube community tab, I created a Google form so that there was the option to submit anonymously. These aren't too spicy, but I don't know, it got you guys flowing. I'm really excited to answer as many of these as I can, and there might even be enough to do more later. But without further ado, let's dive in, because we know I always talk too much, with two questions from Alicia. Do you hate or dislike your books after they've been published? Out of the three you've already published, do you have a favorite? I don't tend to hate the books I've already published, that there's always a love-hate cycle. As you know, I have talked about that before. But there is kind of this, like, I think it's very natural to have a growing slight embarrassment over older published books as you write new ones and you think that they are much better than your older ones. So I do have a favorite of the ones that are published. And accordingly, I'm kind of going to be that author where my favorite is always the latest one, but I think that's because I feel I've gotten better with every book, and I like the books that challenged me, that I felt I like delivered a nice entertaining ride. So my current favorite is The Ivies though. The Stars We Steal, like, I think I'll always have like a special soft spot for that one, and we'll see if this changes as time goes on and that like becomes like a nostalgic favorite. But then I also really love Pretty Dead Queens, but since it's not published yet, we will say that one doesn't count. The next question, also from Alicia, have you ever been recognized in public? And yes, I have. It was really surreal. I was coming home from a special screening of the Downton Abbey movie, so I think that was 2 years ago. I was kind of dressed up, so I was wearing like this cute like 20s-esque red dress, and I'd like done my makeup, and I had like a feather in my hair. Dork. My boss wanted to go to the screening and like dressed up, and I was waiting at the bus stop and two women came up to me, stopped me, asked me if I was Alexa Dunn, and I was like, yes, and they were a fan of this channel, and it was so surreal. And I think I made a joke like, how funny that you ran into me when I'm all dressed up, like, and it was just really kind of cool. But I imagine it from their point of view, which was, is Alexa Dunn standing at a bus stop in Los Angeles? Yes, I was. I take the bus. So that was really like random and fun. The next question is from Tara or Tara. How old were you when you wrote your first book? I was 29. It's never too late, and that's not even that late. So that's when I finished my first book. I did like start trying to write novels before that, but seriously, I was 29 years old, so if you want to write a book, write a book. The next two are anonymous. Has it become more essential to already have a base/social media following to be a traditionally published author? Is it possible without? It has become more essential to demonstrate that you are capable of building a social media following, that you are willing to be on social media in some capacity. Yes, it's always going to be a bonus if you already have a base, but it remains the most important that you write a saleable novel before you focus on building up a platform, because platform is no guarantee to getting a book deal. But as I said, it's a bonus, but it's demonstrating that you're on at least one platform with some base level of competency so that they see the potential that you would be able to do the bare minimum on social media for your book. Do your coworkers at your job know you're an author, and have they read your books? They do know I'm an author. I'm absolutely terrible at keeping secrets. I also work on a really great team in a really great department that has always valued work-life balance, so we've always been interested in each other in our lives and kind of like what we enjoy doing. So they've always known that I was writing, and they knew when I got an agent, and they knew when I sold a book. And in fact, when I got my agent, I like had to have like a very serious conversation, or maybe it was when I got my book deal, but like with my boss, and I recommend this if you have a day job, explaining publishing doesn't pay a lot. I'm not quitting my job. Don't think I have a foot out the door. I'm in it to win it. I'm here, and I'm still here all those years later. I really don't have an intention of quitting my day job, and they're very secure in that and very supportive when I need to take time off for like a book launch or what have you, book events. Have they read my books? I hope not. I don't think they have, and I feel way more comfortable if they don't. Honestly, I find it really awkward when it does come up in my day job career, because it's like I keep those two parts of myself separate, and every once in a while it does come up. I do have one colleague, like anytime we're on like a Zoom meeting with new people, they'll be like, Alexa's a fancy author, and I'll start blushing and like try to diminish it because it's really weird. So I hope they haven't read my books. Honestly, that's the same way I feel about my family. I hope they don't read my books. I just don't want to know. Another anonymous one, are there any channels that talk about the secrets of publishing like you do? Yes, there are some great channels. I actually have an entire video on trad pub authortube channels that I recommend, and several of these are in them, but I will just top line shout two out right now. Michelle Schusterman, definitely go follow, subscribe to her channel. Michelle's been in the business longer than I have. I've known her for years and years and years. I was like, join YouTube, Michelle. Writes in multiple genres, does a lot of ghostwriting now, and has really great insights into traditional publishing. I also recommend Alyssa Matisik, who was an editor at a big 5 publisher and now has a trad pub advice authortube channel. Like authortube, I mean it's a trad pub advice channel. Oh, and then Bookends Literary has a YouTube channel, and so they will post videos often from the perspectives of literary agents and a literary agency. Question from Alvin. Do you still read other genres aside from thrillers and nonfiction? It would be nice to see more reading wrap-ups on your channel that also feature fantasy, romance, or both. Yeah, I know, but welcome to the life of a mood reader. I am a really bad mood reader. I don't really do TBRs. I have trouble making myself read things, which is why you've seen such a shift. I used to read more fantasy and sci-fi, particularly in YA, than I do now. I just don't really pick it up now. Particularly with the pandemic, my reading tastes have been weird, y'all. So I too hope that I branch out, but I just find too much joy from reading nonfiction and thriller, and I'm like 100% a joy-focused reader. Like just wanting to read is a triumph sometimes, and so I stick with the mood reading. An anonymous question, do you ever fear your published writing isn't good? Yes, all the time, and you should fear this. This is a healthy fear. The trick is not to let it overwhelm you, because then we get into imposter syndrome, and if you lean too much into this, you become too anxious, and it can really like stop you from writing. And it can really eat you up inside, but it's better to fear that your published writing isn't good than the opposite, where you're like an egomaniac who may or may not be in the throes of Dunning-Kruger. Because if you don't have that little niggling fear, you'll never grow and improve. We'll say, like, there's always going to be people who don't like your writing and want to neg it, but it is nice when you do get a nice trade review or a nice reader response, or you trust that your editor isn't lying to you when they say that they like your book. And you're always gonna waffle between like, I might actually be garbage, but as I said, that's healthy as long as you can also like take the small wins and go, I'm okay. The next question is, what's the worst part about being an authortuber? It is the randomness that there are just people out there in the universe who really, really hate you based on assumptions, based on all sorts of weird things. And it's like, now, I mean, now we can't see the dislikes on our videos, but like before, it's like you have those dedicated crews who dislike all your videos immediately, and you just know that somewhere out there someone really hates you. It's when you know that you're brought up on gossip forums, or you have people create Goodreads accounts just to 1-star your books, and it's honestly a drag. That's being an authortuber. It's just also kind of being a public figure, but there's something specifically about being an authortuber where like if you dare to speak with any sort of authority on a subject, even with all the disclaimers, and I offer disclaimers all the time, don't think I'm the best writer, but I hope I can help you, people will judge you more harshly and are more likely to like just have really rabid, strong negative feelings about you. And I seem really confident and tough-skinned, and I can be to some degree, but it really bothers me. It's always gonna bother you if you know that someone doesn't like you and there's nothing you can do about it. Ellie Jones asks, would you ever be interested in co-authoring a book or series? Tentatively, yes, but it's gonna heavily depend on who I would co-author with. For the most part, I think I have such a weird insular process. I don't know how I would co-write with someone. Though there is an idea I had in conjunction with a good friend of mine, and we have talked about co-writing. So that's definitely a situation where I would consider it, but it's gonna be like once in a blue moon for me personally. Next question is, if I write a novel with young protagonists but I'm not targeting the YA market, do I have to classify it as YA when querying? Can I query agents who normally don't represent YA? You do not have to label something that has young protagonists as YA. There's a ton of adult fiction across genre, but like you see it in literary fiction all the time, that feature young protagonists, but they are not YA novels. This is all about comps. What are you comping your book to? Would it sit on the shelf next to an adult book? It's an adult book, and you're gonna query adult agents. Next question, you have multiple good ideas surrounding, say, stalkers. Would it affect you negatively and or positively to write these books? Would you risk becoming a typecast authors? Would you become predictable? There are pros and cons to having a very specific brand and writing the same type of book over and over again. It's good that your readers know what they can expect, and in a lot of cases, your publishers are gonna want same but different. That said, yes, you can end up so-called typecasting yourself, and you could theoretically potentially get into a rut as an author. I will say personally, I don't like to limit myself in that way. I have very purposefully, you're gonna notice, each of my thrillers, different trope, really different tone, different trope, different characters, because I wouldn't want to be typecast, for example, as someone who writes boarding school thrillers, because I just don't have the ideas to support a million boarding school thrillers. It was the same reason I wasn't gonna write retelling set on spaceships forever. You do have to be careful about like getting into a rut. But that said, a little brand consistency is not a bad thing. But I'd say really the tricky thing is, how are you making those stories that have a similar thread through them feel different? Are they different enough? The next question is from Olivia. I'm thinking of doing an online writing course to help me understand the elements of fiction better, but something niggles at me to say it's a waste of money because of all the free content on YouTube. Do you think it might be worth doing a structured class with feedback, or design my own solo writing course with free content? Either or. I would tend to agree. I'm very clearly a fan of people shouldn't have to pay for courses to get the fundamentals, the basic, to get a good self-education into writing. I don't like those barriers to success, which is part of the reason this channel exists. However, there can be real value in taking a paid course, but you need to evaluate what that course is, what the caliber of the course is, who is teaching the course, and what do they offer. Indeed, because you mentioned feedback, for me that is the tipping point. I think that's what you should be looking for when you are looking for any kind of paid course with writing. Are you going to get real, direct, personal, and substantive feedback from that course? That is when the course / the instructor is really going to earn their coin, because that is something I am not going to be able to do for you. I don't have the bandwidth to personally offer feedback on people's writing. So you might find that that is something that is worth it to you. That said, what I might do is design your own like solo free writing course using free resources that do exist, and then find a very like specific course type that addresses something that you personally want to work on, or is taught by a specific person that you want to have their eyes on your work, and then you pay for that one specific thing. The next is an anonymous question, trying to be spicy, and I kind of like it. Are your books doing as well as you expected they would? Honestly, in some ways they're doing better than I expected they would, but I had very low expectations. So hey, go into publishing with very low expectations. You will be pleasantly surprised. Meaning, my books are YA sci-fi, my first two, and I was very aware of what that meant, and I've been pleasantly surprised by how well they've sold in various formats total, like all together, and also across the years. It's been over 3 years since Brightly Burning came out, and for some reason people still buy it and read it. It's delightful. So I'm pleasantly surprised. With the Ivies, it's a bit tougher. I'm not that far out from publication. It already exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways, But I definitely have loftier ambitions for myself than where I am sitting now. It is good to have hopes and goals and dreams and ambitions, and so I hope to see more happen in the future, sales-wise. Next from Chutlu Needs Coffee, love that name. 2 good questions from you here. What is your opinion on Mark Twain's statement about the finality of creative ideas? Twain states, there was no such thing as a new idea, it is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. I agree with this. When I said in my harsh writing advice video, like there are no original ideas, I said that in the spirit of to free up your own self-doubt so that you're not like twisting yourself into a pretzel to write something original and to kind of let go of perfectionism, but also because this is definitely how I approach writing. I mean, I come from fanfic. I think they're original executions of ideas. I think you can lend your own original spin, creativity, voice to something, but indeed, I love the idea of a mental kaleidoscope. I mean, I'm definitely with Twain here. And writers generally drink lots of coffee for various reasons. It is life. That's me saying it is life. How do you take yours? I just love this random question. How do I take my coffee? So first of all, I like dark roast coffee. My favorite. I'm basic enough. I like a nice French roast. Who doesn't? So I like dark roasts. And then I like to add, so when I can, I get soy creamer because theoretically I really shouldn't have lactose, but honestly, I love nothing more than a nice healthy splash of half and half. Don't want it too light, but don't want it too dark. And then I like just enough sugar where it's a teeny bit sweet, but I don't like it too sweet. So like I think that's a pretty basic way to take coffee. But oh, I do love a good soy creamer, but not a flavored soy creamer. I've had the vanilla soy. No, I don't like flavor in my coffee. I used to like flavor in my coffee, and then it's like a switch flipped, and now I hate flavor in my coffee. So I'm a very straightforward person. I like to taste the coffee, but with that bit of cream and sugar. Night Owl Reader asks, out of the main protagonists of your books, which one is the most likely one you'd become friends with? I love this question. Oh. Part of the problem is that they're all teenagers, and teenagers, you're lovely, but I don't know if I want to be friends with you. I'd probably be more of a mentor, and I could see myself bringing mentorship to any of my characters because they all need growth. So I guess I have to think like, how would they be in their 30s? I could probably hang with Cecilia, who is the main character for Pretty Dead Queens. Honestly, depending on how Olivia goes as she kind of emerges into her 20s and goes into her 30s, that could go either way. There are aspects of Olivia where we could definitely hang, and then there are choices Olivia makes where I'm like, no. And see, those are my main characters. I have a problem where tertiary characters are almost always my favorites and the people I would be friends with. So I would be friends with Avery. I would be friends with Daniel from The Stars We Steal. I would definitely be friends with Evgenia from The Stars We Steal. I love tertiary characters. But with my mains, Cecilia's the person I think I would want to spend time with, and we would bond over losing our moms. And Olivia's like a toss-up how she ends up. Olivia and I could probably hang, but I'd probably want Avery there because Avery's cool. No. I love that, and I really hope it's a reference to the Vicar of Dibley, though it's probably not. Ass. Do you currently have a list of ideas for books you want to write, and how many ideas are on that list? Yes, I have an idea file. I think it's got over 10 on it, for sure. Some of them are just like nuggets of ideas. And then I have some that I don't even think I physically have put on that list. So like I have between like 10 and 15 theoretically executable ideas, but like it really varies. Some of them are so top line, I got nothing. Others I have like plots for. So yeah. And accordingly, Kate asks, would you ever consider going back to writing sci-fi, or are you firmly in love with thrillers? How about writing middle grade or adult? I don't think I could write middle grade. Never say never. I certainly don't read enough of it to have that audacity. I don't like to write in categories I don't read. Adult, absolutely. I am working like very like early stages on some adult thrillers. I really want to write one. Would I go back to sci-fi? Yes, but I am pretty deeply ingrained in thrillers for the time being, and I don't write particularly quickly, and I juggle this on top of a day job, so it's a long way off. However, one of the ideas I did shelve years ago, it was in the early stages, but like I have a decent plot arc, was a sci-fi thriller, but I hadn't written a thriller yet. And now that I have more thriller experience, that remains something that I can go back to. But I do have a sci-fi romance retelling that's just been like there for years now, 5-6 years. And I know that someday I will probably write it. So yes, not in the same universe as my first 2 books, but spiritually would be like a cousin. And there was a real hive mind going on because spectral delusions, these are all questions asked in a row. Asked, are there any former projects you'd like to go back to and rework, recycle, cannibalize? Yes-ish. The first 2 books I wrote that I ended up shelving were both sci-fi concepts, and they had nuggets in them that I'm still fairly attached to. Like, I still think they're good ideas. The executions would not work now. I've grown too much as a writer, the market has moved on, but I do have in like the very back of my mind the idea to kind of, I love the word cannibalize my own work, yes. And there are actually little things that I already have kind of mined from those earlier books for other books, the published ones. Next, I got 2 questions that are really similar. What college did you go to for writing? And for Morgan, do you have a degree in any form of education in writing? I do not have a degree in education in writing, like teaching writing and of teaching of any kind. I do have a degree in a writing related field. I went to Boston University where I got my degree in magazine journalism of all things, and my minor was German, which has come in handy more than once. So I have several of the courses I took there as part of my liberal arts requirements. And so that's just kind of my background, because when I went to college, I was like, I'm gonna be so practical and get this really practical writing degree, which I loved every minute of. I don't regret my journalism degree, and it gave me a lot of transferable skills, but the irony is that journalism was just such a mess of an industry, and I graduated into a recession, and behold, I am not a journalist. I found a ton of the stuff I learned there works in my marketing job. They're like cousins, marketing and journalism. But you don't have to have a writing related degree to be a writer, or I think to teach writing. On this level, it'd be a different story if I were trying to teach you writing on a university level. I'd have to have a master's degree in that case. But yeah, so like that is my background, but don't psych yourself out if you don't have a degree in writing, because you do not need one. Morgan also asked, when did you start writing? Like many writers, at the dawn of time. Like when I was like a kid, I wrote what I didn't know was fanfic. I wrote my own Babysitters Club books. Were they books? No, my mom was so proud though. So I was doing that kind of thing when I was young, but like really technically I started writing Buffy fanfic, actually knew it was fanfic when I was 13, 14 years old. And then I did a lot of journalism with college, more fanfic writing into my 20s. But if you're only counting novels, like when did I start writing novels? I was 25 or 26 years old. As I said in an early answer, I didn't finish my first book until I was 29. Which I think prompts this other question that I got. Do you think fanfic writers are wasting their time writing fic when they should be writing original fiction? No! I did not waste my time writing fanfiction. In fact, I think it's writing fanfic for all those years. I wrote fanfic for basically 10 years that enabled me to jump right into my first original fiction project when I was ready. Had to try out a couple of ideas. And I got an agent for that book. It didn't end up selling, but I wrote a book that was cohesive and not completely terrible. And I think it's because I spent so much time writing fanfic for pure fun, exploring the things I wanted to write, leaning into my strengths as a writer, which I think you naturally do in fanfic, provided your strengths are supported by the pros of fanfic. And then, you know, I worked on the stuff that you're not necessarily gonna get out of fanfic once I did start working on original fiction. But I think there are all sorts of deficits if you don't write fanfic and you jump right into original fiction. And a huge one is when you're young and you're writing not great original fiction, just because early writing is often not great, it's really hard to find people to read it. And feedback is so essential to growth. And I love fan fiction because you have a built-in fandom community. You have a built-in readership who will read your work almost no matter what. And some people say, oh, that's bad because you only hear good things. No, you can get really good feedback from beta readers, and it's not hard to find beta readers when you're writing in a fandom, an engaged fandom. So I don't think it's a waste of time. I think more people should write fan fiction. Tips on how long you should let your manuscript rest after the first draft. I don't want to edit too soon. It's going to vary. I would say if you're before a pro level, meaning what sucks is often in TrodPub you just don't have the luxury of time. You have to edit really on a really fast turnaround. But if you do have the luxury of time, I recommend, I mean, at minimum, try to take a month off, but I think 3 to 6 months is even better. It gives you distance from the manuscript so that the next time you look at it, you can read it a little more objectively, more like a reader might read it rather than the writer, where it's just really close to your heart and you really don't want to change things. That distance is really important. Lilith asks, what are some ways you use to help you get through the muddy middle aside from just sit and write? If you talk to anyone, are they fellow writers or anyone? One thing that I do, I've talked about this in some process videos, I call them like logical questions or questions and answers or bullet pointed lists, where I will literally kind of jot down a list of where the character is, where I need them to go, like the things that I know need to happen. And then that can help me kind of like, it's like seeing a roadmap in front of me. This helps a lot with thrillers especially, but I think you can apply it to different genres of like, okay, I know my character needs to get here, so what are the logical steps that would make sense to get them to that point? And then yes, I talk to other writers. I always have like writer friends that I torture through the process of drafting. So sorry, I love them. Like, I'm lucky enough that I'll have 1 or 2 people who will read my book piecemeal as I write it. At this point, like I've had that on each of my last couple books, and they're usually the person that I will pepper with questions. I'll bounce things off of them. I'll send them the latest and have them read it so that we're kind of on the same page. And I'm very fortunate that I'm able to talk kind of through those roadblocks and problems with them between those 2 things. Although sometimes it's also just taking a break. I mean, I'm a broken record. You know that I take showers to have brainwaves. That's also another one, and that helps me especially in the middle. Carrie asked, do you have any insight or advice about writing non-linear narratives? I'd love to know more about this story structure and how to use it effectively in writing and storytelling. I have not tackled this yet, but this is also on my own bucket list of something I love to read as a reader that I know is challenging, that I want to tackle as a writer at some point myself and challenge myself. And I have I have a mentee that I've worked with. This isn't so much non-linear, but she was writing a multi-POV thriller with a lot going on. And what I did for her that I think would help with a lot non-linear storyline, that a trick I might use in the future, I basically broke it down in a spreadsheet where we did every single chapter, the POV character, the like main function of the scene, like the thing that happens in the scene that changes the status quo in one box. And then what I would do with non-linear is I might have like another column to like track like who is where and what is going on, and like I might do one for one timeline and one for another and then merge them. That's one way I can think that I might try to figure out this structure, because of course with non-linear you're gonna write it out of order, but you should know the ultimate real logical order, and that should help you figure out how you end up structuring it dovetail together so that it still has like an arc to the reading experience. That's how I would tackle it. If you could pick a genre, trope, old publishing trend that hasn't been revitalized yet, which one would you pick? Bring back dystopia. I love dystopia. I loved it in its heyday. I love that it's basically sci-fi, and publishing keeps being like, sci-fi, don't know her. So I want that to come back. I mean, although, yeah, just sci-fi. Can my answer be sci-fi? But specific to dystopian, I like that it's a gateway drug to sci-fi that YA publishing will actually touch or used to. I think that having come through a real life dystopia, we could see a fresh approach, fresh take. I also think there were a lot of voices that didn't get to do dystopia when it was the last trend. So like, I just think it's overdue for a revitalization, a fresh take, bring it back, love it, let's do it. And I'm actually going to wrap this up because I talk a lot as always, but I am losing the light winter in California, and I still have, you guys really gave me great questions, so I will answer more in a part 2 later in the month, which gives those of you who didn't catch the form the first time around to submit more questions of your own. I'm gonna have that link down below in a pinned comment. So the last one for part 1 of the December winter Q&A. Advice for authors releasing their debut novel soon. I mean, take a deep breath. Try not to, I know that's like, it is overwhelming. I've talked a lot about toxic debut culture. I think we're moving out of the worst of toxic debut culture, but I actually think the flip side of that can make it more stressful for you as a debut because there's less attention paid to buzzy debuts, or at least from what I have observed. Trust me, that is good for the long-term health of your life and career and your peers. But in the moment, I know that that is very, very stressful. So just kind of make sure you have good care networks around you. IRL, non-writer people, real life people who love you no matter what. Maybe try to explain to them how weird publishing is so that they can support you the way that you need to be supported. But then also make sure you have your publishing friends, fellow debuts, people who you really trust, who you can talk to. I really hope you've got a good relationship with your agent if you are traditionally publishing, because they can also be a really good resource and a rock for you through the experience. You're probably feeling a lot of stress about like everything that you have to do, regardless of your publishing path. You have to do a lot. It is true. If you're debuting as indie, there's a lot more of the burden on you to market, but we feel that burden as well, even if we are traditionally publishing, especially in this climate. So my best advice to debuts, pick 1 or 2 things that feel feasible for you to do, that you will actually enjoy doing, that there is some proof that actually moves the needle. My go-to ARC giveaways are great, and they're really easy to do digitally. So even if your publisher isn't supporting you with that, with say like a Goodreads giveaway, though if you are indie, you could do your own Goodreads giveaway. But honestly, just if your book is on NetGalley, get some widgets is what they're called. They're basically direct links that enable specific people to download it. Do a giveaway for that and coordinate it with your publicist, or do it yourself if you are indie publishing, to distribute some e-arcs to people who might be interested. This, of course, I know might be a little overwhelming because you're a debut, who do you know? But like do like 1 ARC giveaway anyway, but also look for opportunities. Do you know someone who maybe has a bit more of a platform than you do? Whether it's a fellow debut banding together with other debuts to do a coordinated multiple book giveaway, or if you find someone more seasoned, maybe it's one of your blurbers, ask them if they will do an ARC giveaway for you. I personally don't think you need to twist yourself into a pretzel to do a pre-order giveaway unless you think that your book is gonna have a fandom, basically, if it's a genre that supports it or you feel that you have the platform for it. But otherwise, honestly, don't stress yourself out, or if you really want to, do a digital pre-order, like a bonus something or other that you can email to people or give them the ability to log in to view. Don't do physical giveaways. They are so expensive, and you're inadvertently, I think they add stress to the release week that you do not need. I did one for not my debut, and the added stress was not fun. So just, yeah, don't stress yourself out. Make sure you have that friend network. And my other like go-to thing, try to coordinate events if you can. If you can do an in-person launch, do it, because it's just a fun experience to have that launch night. But do virtual. Find a way to do virtual events. You can pitch yourself to bookstores. I have done it many times, and I think some authors don't realize this. There's almost always an events contact for bookstores. Your local indie is usually going to be your best bet, and ask if, check if they do virtual, and pitch an event. To take the pressure off you, find some other authors who will do like a panel with you, a debut panel or a genre-specific panel, and do some virtual events. And then I know this is really, really hard, but like weirdly, my best piece of advice to a debut, work on your next book if you aren't already or haven't already, and really think about what that next book is. Obviously pick something that you want to write and you enjoy writing, but try to make it something that's going to be a very natural, either a natural springboard from your debut or completely different from your debut. I know you're like, I haven't even debuted yet. Why do you want me to think about my next book? I don't know. I'm a person where, like, first of all, I just like working on the next thing. It feels kind of hope and excitement and joy, but also I like feeling anchored by the strategy of like, all right, my debut's happening. I can't really do anything anymore other than some light marketing stuff. Like, what's my next move? I personally find that really grounding and settling, so that would also be a piece of my advice. I hope that helped. Like, I feel like there's so much you can say for debuts, and I feel like years ago I probably made a video on that, so search the channel, I'm sure I did. Thank you so much for all your questions. As I said, losing the light, I'm gonna have to do a part 2. Check out that form below and submit more questions. I will do that a little bit further into December, or you can put questions below in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.